In today's video, I'm going to talk about the new album by Mudhoney called Plastic Eternity, released on April 7th, 2023 through Sub Pop Records, produced by Johnny Sangster. First, I will give a brief history of the band Mudhoney. Then I will give you my first impressions of the album. I'll talk about the songs, then give my overall thoughts, and conclude the video with a score out of 10. Mudhoney is a grunge band from Seattle that was one of the first grunge bands on the scene. They never had the popularity of other bands like Nirvana, Soundgarden, and Alice in Chains and Pearl Jam. The band does form part of the grunge family tree. The band started as the band Green River, then they broke up and turned into two more bands. So we have Mudhoney on one side and then Mother Love Bone on the other side. And they turned into Temple of the Dog, and they would actually turn into Pearl Jam. But in this band, we have three original members: Mark Arm on vocals and rhythm guitar, Dan Peters on drums, Steve Turner on lead guitar, and on bass we have Guy Madison, who's been with the band since 2001. The band has been releasing music since the late 80s. They have 11 albums. The sound has evolved over the years, becoming more of an alternative rock band, but I feel this album is kind of a return to their roots, but I will be talking about that in part 3. When I first listened to the album, I was surprised at how much it reminded me of their earlier stuff. It was closer to garage rock with more hints of psychedelia. It's still a Mudhoney album. There are lots of fuzzy, distorted guitars, pounding drums, and a loud bass guitar sound, playing along with the typical noise and feedback of a typical grunge band. If you are unfamiliar with this band, they have a sound closer to early Nirvana than the other big grunge bands. So in other words, they're more of like a punk rock type of sound. This album has 13 songs. It's 42 minutes long, so let's talk about the songs briefly. Souvenir of My Trip is a very psychedelic song that reminded me a little of Iggy Pop. There were haunting keyboard sounds, and it made kind of sound like you're in a haunted house. A lot of fuzz and some grungy wah-wah effect-filled guitar solos. Almost Everything is more of a hard-driving rock song with a cool drum beat. Sounds like he's playing the bongo drums or something like that. This has an early 90s throwback sound. The guitar sounds like a buzzsaw. The guitars almost sound out of tune, but it's just part of the whole early 90s grunge sound. Cascades of Crap is a song about consumerism. One of the few songs that has some politically inspired lyrics. The song has more of a raw garage rock sound. The song has a very cool bass guitar outro. Flush the Fascists is a very weird space rock type of song. The vocals are more spoken than sung, reminded me of Lou Reed. Very simple and minimalistic song, one of the more artsy songs of the album. Move Under has a pounding drum beat in the intro and one of the more energetic songs that reminded me of some of those proto-punk bands from the late 60s like Iggy and the Stooges. This one has a very raw sound with a memorable chorus, and you can hear the other members doing some of the backing vocals. Severed Dreams in the Sleeper Cell is a slower, trippier song, kind of song you can listen to after a few bong rips. It's another one where it reminded me of Lou Reed doing that spoken word stuff. It's the longest song, just under 5 minutes, so it felt like it droned on a bit in comparison with some of the others. Here Comes the Flood is more of an upbeat grunge song, reminding me of something from an early Nirvana album, maybe Bleach or Incesticide. Has a loud and noisy sound with a catchy chorus. Human Stock Capital, similar to what I just said, very raw and grungy, reminded me of early Nirvana, kind of like an angry garage rock song with lots of angst and energy. Tom Herman's Hermits is more of a laid-back space rock song with some trippy guitar riffs and weird vocals. One or two, that was a pretty cool song. It's more of like an acoustic song, kind of like a mix between like Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, but it's still Mudhoney. Has some of those psychedelic undertones, and another trippy and spacey type of song. Crimey and Atmospheric River has an old school grunge sound with a mix of spoken and screamed vocals. Another one that reminded me of an old Iggy Pop song, but with some psychedelic toned guitar melodies. This one was pretty cool. It had some tempo changes and was an interesting song. Plasticity is a weird song, very simple and minimalistic. Has some punk rock vibes mixed with 90s grunge. Final song, Little Dogs, a weird song. The most like Iggy Pop sounding song on the album, I guess. It's more of a laid back song, not too bad. It had some sounds reminding me of early 80s post-punk, maybe something like the B-52s, or maybe it was because they added in some like trippy keyboards. So let's talk about some of the lyrics. A lot of the lyrics are like environmentally conscious in general. Cascades of Crap is about consumerism. Cry Me an Atmospheric River seems to be about pollution and climate change. Then there were a few songs that were hard to interpret. For example, Tom Herman's Hermits. Kind of hard to figure out because after a Google search, I only found Tom Herman, the football coach, or some other musician, but I imagine it's about a past band member. And Severed Dreams in a Sleeper Cell seems to be about someone who is sleeping and can no longer have dreams. But again, they mention a sleeper cell, which is a type of a secret spy or terrorist group, so it might have a deeper meaning. So I thought the album was okay. I am a big fan of 90s music, especially grunge and alternative, but Mudhoney was never one of my favorites. I think it's a band I can get into a little more if I spend more time listening to them. I thought it was better than some of their previous albums. It's really had a throwback sound, brought back some of the sounds of the earlier albums. It's cool to see some of these 90s grunge bands still making music. Overall, the album was very consistent. I don't think it had any weak songs or filler, but at the same time, it didn't have anything that stood out for me or for me to be able to say it was a great song that I will be listening to over and over. I will still revisit this album though. My favorite songs were the ones that reminded me of early grunge, being Here Comes the Flood, Human Stock Capital, and 1 or 2. My least favorite ones were the songs that droned on a bit, like the slower space ones like Severed Dreams in a Sleeper Cell. I also thought that Human Stock Capital was a good song because it was about like how workers are easily like expendable and replaceable in the workforce, and Little Dogs was about little dogs like poodles and Yorkies, or I imagine it was. My final score for this will be a 7 out of 10. I think if I give it some more listens, it might go up, but for now, that's my score. It will probably please longtime fans of the band, as they haven't really changed their sound that much over the course of their career. Please let me know what you thought in the comments section. Please remember to give this video a like. It helps me with the algorithm. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.